Number 5467, verses 21 to 24. And they said each to his brother, We are surely guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come unto us. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child? And ye would not hearken. Therefore, behold, his blood is required. And they knew not that Joseph heard them, for there was an interpreter between them. And he turned about from them and wept. And he returned to them and spake unto them, and took Simeon from them, and bound him before their eyes. And they said each to his brother, signifies perception concerning the cause. We are surely guilty concerning our brother, signifies that they are to blame because they have alienated the internal by non-reception of good. In that we saw the distress of his soul, signifies the state of the internal in regard to good when it was alienated. When he besought us and we would not hear, signifies its continual entreaty without reception. And Reuben answered them, saying, signifies perception still from faith in doctrine and in the understanding. Spake I not unto you, saying, signifies the degree of perception thence. Do not sin against the child, signifies that they should not be disjoined. And ye would not hearken, signifies non-reception. Therefore, behold, his blood is required, signifies the stings of conscience thence. And they knew not that Joseph heard them, signifies that from the natural light in which those truths are, it is not believed that all things appear from spiritual light. For there was an interpreter between them, signifies that then spiritual things are apprehended quite differently. And he turned about from them, signifies somewhat of drawing back. And wept, signifies mercy. And he returned to them and spake to them, signifies influx. And took Simeon from them, signifies faith in the will. And bound him, signifies separation. Before their eyes, signifies to the perception. Number 5468. And they said each to his brother. This signifies perception concerning the cause, as is evident from the signification of saying in the histories of the word, namely perception, and from the signification of each to his brother, namely mutually. The reason why their saying each to his brother here signifies perception concerning the cause, why Joseph spake hardly to them, calling them spies, and keeping them in custody 3 days, is that in the verses which now follow, their mutual discourse treats of the cause, wherefore perception concerning this is signified. Number 5469. We are surely guilty concerning our brother. This signifies that they are to blame because they have alienated the internal by non-reception of good, as is evident from the signification of being guilty, namely being at fault and under the imputation of rejection of good and truth, and from the representation of Joseph, who is the brother concerning whom they were guilty, namely the internal they had rejected or alienated. For Joseph and Benjamin represented the internal of the church, but the other 10 sons of Jacob its external. For Rachel, who was the mother of Joseph and Benjamin, is the affection of interior truth, and Leah is the affection of exterior truth. In this chapter, Joseph represents the celestial of the spiritual, or truth from the divine, which is the internal. Benjamin, the spiritual of the celestial, which is the intermediate proceeding thence. And the other 10 sons of Jacob, the truths of the external church, thus truths in the natural, see above. This chapter treats also of the conjunction of the internal of the church with its external, in general and in particular. For every man must be a church in particular, in order to be a part of the general church. But in the supreme sense, the subject treated of is the Lord, how he united the internal with the external in his human, that he might make it divine. Number 5470. In that we saw the distress of his soul. This signifies the state of the internal in the meantime when it was alienated, as is evident from the signification of distress of soul, namely the state of the internal when alienated from the external. As regards this state, the Lord continually flows into man with good, and in good with truth. But man either accepts or does not accept. If he accepts, it is well with him, but if he does not accept, it is ill with him. If when he does not accept he feels some anxiety, here meant by distress of soul, there is hope that he may be reformed. But if he has no feeling of anxiety, the hope vanishes. With every man there are 2 spirits from hell and 2 angels from heaven. For man being born in sins cannot possibly live unless on one side he communicates with hell and on the other with heaven. All his life is thence. When man is grown up and begins to govern himself from himself, that is, when he seems to himself to will and to act from his own judgment, and to think and to conclude concerning the things of faith from his own understanding, if he then betakes himself to evils, the 2 spirits from hell draw near, and the 2 angels from heaven withdraw a little. But if he betakes himself to good, the 2 angels from heaven draw near, and the 2 spirits from hell are removed. If therefore when a man betakes himself to evils, as is the case with many in youth, he feels any anxiety when he reflects upon his having done what is evil, it is a sign that he will still receive influx through the angels from heaven, and it is also a sign that he will afterwards allow himself to be reformed. But if when he reflects upon his having done what is evil he has no anxious feeling, it is a sign that he is no longer willing to receive influx through the angels from heaven. And it is also a sign that he will not afterwards allow himself to be reformed. Here therefore, where the truths of the external church are treated of, which are represented by the 10 sons of Jacob, mention is made of Joseph's distress of soul when alienated from his brethren, and also next that Reuben admonished them, whereby is signified that when this state had proceeded, reformation or the conjunction of the internal with the external would afterwards take place. See below. For with those who are then in anxiety, there is an internal acknowledgement of evil, which when revived by the Lord, becomes confession, and finally repentance. Number 5471. When he besought us, and we would not hear. This signifies its continual entreaty without reception, as is evident from the signification of beseeching, namely, entreaty. For beseeching not to be alienated, when the influx of good from the divine is treated of, is an entreaty to be received, because the good which flows in from the Lord is continually urging and as it were entreating, but its reception rests with the man. Hence it is that beseeching not to be alienated signifies continual entreaty. From this it follows that not to hear signifies not to be received. In the sense of the letter, a number of persons are treated of, namely the 10 sons of Jacob and Joseph. But in the internal sense, these are treated as one subject. The truths of the external church, or in the natural, represented by the 10 sons of Jacob, are the truths in the external man. And the celestial of the spiritual, represented by Joseph, is truth from the divine in the internal man. It is similar with other histories of the word. For things are signified by persons, and the things themselves have reference to one subject. Number 5472. And Reuben answered them, saying. This signifies perception still from faith in doctrine and in the understanding, as is evident from the signification of answering or saying to his brethren, namely perception. That saying denotes perception may be seen above. And from the representation of Reuben, namely faith in doctrine and in the understanding, or the truth of doctrine through which the good of life can be attained. As the subject here is the entreaty of good, or of the divine in good, to be received, mention is made of faith and how it teaches concerning the reception of good. For if when a man recedes from good he feels any anxiety, this is not from any innate dictate, but from the faith he has acquired from infancy, which then dictates and causes this anxiety. This is the reason why Reuben, by whom this faith is represented, here speaks. It is called faith in doctrine and in the understanding, to distinguish it from faith in life and in the will, which faith is represented by Simeon. Number 5473. Spake I not unto you, saying. This signifies the degree of perception thence, as is evident from the signification of saying in the histories of the word, namely perception. And because speaking or saying is twice mentioned, as also just above, it is the degree of perception that is signified. Number 5474. Do not sin against the child. This signifies that they should not be disjoined, that is, the external from the internal, as is evident from the signification of sinning, namely disjunction. For all sin disjoins, and from the representation of Joseph, who is here the child, namely the internal. Number 5475. And ye would not hearken. This signifies non-reception, as is evident from the signification of to hear or to hearken, namely to obey. And because it denotes to obey, it also denotes to accept. For one who obeys what faith dictates accepts. In this instance, it is non-reception because it is said, ye would not hearken. Number 5476. Therefore behold his blood is required. This signifies the stings of conscience thence, as is evident from the signification of blood, namely violence offered to good or to charity. When this violence or this blood is required, it causes internal anxiety, which is called the sting of conscience. But this is the case only with those who have been in anxiety when they sinned. Number 5477. And they knew not that Joseph heard them. This signifies that from the natural light in which these truths are, it is not believed that all things appear from spiritual light, as is evident from the representation of the sons of Jacob who knew not, who are the truths of the external church, thus truths in the natural, see above. Whence follows the signification that from the natural light in which these truths are, it is not believed. And from the representation of Joseph, namely the celestial of the spiritual, which is in spiritual light. That from this light appear the truths in the natural, is signified by Joseph's hearing them. For to hear signifies both to obey and to perceive. Thus that the truths in the natural appeared from spiritual light, but not conversely. In regard to natural light and spiritual light, the case is this. Natural light is from the Son of the world, and spiritual light is from the Son of heaven, which is the Lord. All the truths of faith that man learns from infancy are apprehended by means of such objects and derivative ideas as are from the light of the world. Thus each and all are apprehended naturally. For all the ideas of man's thought, so long as he lives in the world, are founded upon such things as are in the world. And therefore, if these were taken away from him, his thought would utterly perish. The man who has not been regenerated is wholly ignorant of spiritual light. He does not even know that there is in heaven a light that has nothing in common with the light of the world. Still less does he know that it is this light that enlightens the ideas and objects which are from the light of the world, and enables man to think, infer, and reflect. Spiritual light can do this because this light is the wisdom itself that proceeds from the Lord, and this is seen as light by the angels in heaven. From this light appear each and all things that are below, or that are in man from natural light, but not conversely, unless the man has been regenerated, in which case the things of heaven, that is, of good and truth, by enlightenment from spiritual light, appear in the natural, as in a representative mirror. From this it is evident that the Lord, who is light itself, sees each and all things in the thought and will of man, nay, in universal nature, and that nothing whatever is hidden from him. From all this it is now evident that from the natural light in which these truths are, it is not believed that all things appear from spiritual light, as is signified by their not knowing that Joseph heard them. Joseph's knowing his brethren and their not knowing him, verse 8 above, involves a similar meaning, for thereby is signified that these truths of the church appeared to the celestial of the spiritual from its light, and that truth from the divine did not appear in natural light, not yet illumined by heavenly light. Number 5478. For there was an interpreter between them. This signifies that then spiritual things are apprehended quite differently, as is evident from the signification of there being an interpreter between them, namely that the spiritual things are apprehended differently. For an interpreter translates the language of one into the language of another, and thus sets forth the meaning of the one to the apprehension of the other. Hence it is that there being an interpreter between them signifies that then spiritual things are apprehended quite differently by those who are in the truths of the church, not yet conjoined by means of good with the internal man. That the truths of the church are apprehended quite differently by those who are in good, that is, those with whom these truths are conjoined with good, and by those who are not in good, seems indeed a paradox, but it is the truth. For truths are spiritually apprehended by those who are in good, because these persons are in spiritual light, but they are apprehended naturally by those who are not in good, because these are in natural light. Hence truths have truths continually conjoined with them by those who are in good, but they have conjoined with them very many fallacies and also falsities by those who are not in good. The reason of this is that truths with those who are in good extend to heaven, while truths with those who are not in good do not extend to heaven. Hence truths with those who are in good are full, but with those who are not in good they are nearly empty. This fullness and this emptiness are not apparent to man so long as he lives in the world, but they are apparent to the angels. Did man but know how much of heaven there is in truths conjoined with good, he would feel very differently about faith. Number 5479. And he turned about from them. This signifies somewhat of drawing back, as is evident from the signification of turning about from them when predicated of the influx of good from the divine or the Lord, namely, somewhat of drawing back. For the Lord never turns himself from anyone, but moderates the influx of good according to the state of the man or angel. It is this moderating that is meant by drawing back. Number 5480. And wept. This signifies mercy, as is evident from the signification of weeping when predicated of the Lord, who is here represented by Joseph, namely, mercy. Weeping is expressive of grief and love, as is well known, and consequently it is expressive of mercy or pity, for mercy is love grieving. The divine love is therefore called mercy, because the human race is of itself in hell, and when man perceives this in himself, he implores mercy. As weeping is also mercy in the internal sense, therefore in the word weeping is sometimes predicated of Jehovah or the Lord, as in Isaiah, I will bewail with weeping for Jazer, the vine of Sibmah. I will water thee with my tears, O Heshbon, and Elealeh. And in Jeremiah, I know the indignation of Moab, saith Jehovah, that it is not right. Therefore will I howl for Moab, and I will cry out for all Moab. Above the weeping of Jazer will I weep for thee, O vine of Sibmah. Moab denotes those who are natural good and suffer themselves to be led astray, and when led astray adulterate goods. To howl, cry out, and weep over denote pitying and grieving. Likewise in Luke, when Jesus drew nigh, he beheld the city and wept over it. In Jerusalem, over which Jesus wept, or which he pitied and for which he grieved, was not only the city Jerusalem, but also the church, the last day of which, when there would no longer be any charity nor consequently any faith, is meant in the internal sense. And hence for pity and grief he wept. That Jerusalem is the church may be seen above. Number 5481. And he returned to them and spake to them. This signifies influx, as is evident from the signification of returning to them and speaking to them after he had turned from them, namely influx. For the celestial of the spiritual or truth from the divine, represented by Joseph, flows into the truths in the natural. This is expressed in the sense of the letter by returning to them and speaking to them. That to speak also denotes to flow in may be seen above. Number 5482. And took Simeon from them. This signifies faith in the will, as is evident from the representation of Simeon, namely faith in the will. Faith in the will was separated from them because there was not yet present the intermediate represented by Benjamin. For truth from the divine, represented by Joseph, flows in through an intermediate into the good of faith, and through this into its truth, or what is the same, into the willing of truth, and through this into the understanding of truth, or what is still the same, into charity to the neighbor, and through this into faith. No other way of influx is possible with the man who has been regenerated, nor is there any other way of influx with the angels. This is like the influx of the sun into its earthly objects. While it is producing them from seed and renewing them, it flows in with heat, as in spring and summer, and at the same time with light, and thereby produces them. But by light alone it produces nothing at all, as is plain from these subjects in winter. Spiritual heat is the good of love, and spiritual light is the truth of faith. Moreover, spiritual heat in the subjects of the animal kingdom produces the vital heat, and spiritual light produces the life thence derived. Number 5483. And bound him. This signifies separation, as is evident from the signification of binding, namely, separation. Number 5484. Before their eyes. This signifies to the perception, as is evident from the signification of eyes, namely the understanding and perception. Number 5485, verses 25 to 28. And Joseph commanded to fill their vessels with corn, and to restore their silver, every one's into his sack, and to give them provision for the way. And he did thus to them. And they lifted their produce upon their asses, and went thence. And one opened his sack to give his ass provender in the inn, and he saw his silver, and behold, it was in the mouth of his bag. And he said unto his brethren, My silver is restored, and lo, it is even in my bag. And their heart failed, and they trembled each to his brother, saying, What is this that God hath done to us? And Joseph commanded, signifies influx from the celestial of the spiritual, to fill their vessels with corn, signifies that the external knowledges were endowed with good from truth, and to restore their silver, signifies without any ability of theirs. Every one's into his sack, signifies wherever there was a receptacle in the natural, and to give them provision for the way, signifies that it would support the truths they had. And he did thus to them, signifies the effect. And they lifted their produce upon their asses, signifies that truths were gathered into external knowledges. And they went thence, signifies the consequent life. And one opened his sack, signifies observation, to give his ass provender in the inn, signifies when there was reflection upon the external knowledges in the exterior natural. And he saw his silver, signifies apperception that it was without any ability of their own. And behold, it was in the mouth of his bag, signifies that they were bestowed and stored up in the threshold of the exterior natural. And he said unto his brethren, signifies general perception. My silver is restored, signifies that there was no aid from them. And lo, it is even in my bag, signifies that it was in the exterior natural. And their heart failed, signifies fear. And they trembled each to his brother, signifies general terror, saying, What is this that God hath done to us? Signifies on account of so much providence. Number 5486. And Joseph commanded. This signifies influx from the celestial of the spiritual, as is evident from the signification of commanding when predicated of the celestial of the spiritual, or of the internal in respect to the external, namely, influx. For the internal commands in no other way than by influx, and then by disposal for use. And from the representation of Joseph, namely, the celestial of the spiritual. See above. Number 5487. And they filled their vessels with corn. This signifies that the external knowledges were endowed with good from truth, as is evident from the signification of filling, which, being free of charge, signifies to be endowed with. From the signification of vessels, namely external knowledges, and from the signification of corn, namely good from truth, or the good of truth. Number 5488. And to restore their silver. This signifies without any ability of theirs, as is evident from the signification of to buy with silver, namely to procure for oneself from one's own. Here therefore to restore silver is to give freely, or without any ability of theirs. As also in Isaiah, Every one that thirsteth, come ye to the waters, and he that hath no silver, come ye, buy and eat. Yea, come, buy wine and milk without silver and without price. Number 5489. Into his sack. This signifies wherever there was a receptacle in the natural, as is evident from the signification of a sack, namely, a receptacle. See below. It is in the natural because the subject treated of is the truths and external knowledges in the natural. Here a sack specifically signifies external knowledge. For as a sack is a receptacle of corn, so external knowledge is a receptacle of good. Here of the good that is from truth. Few know that external knowledge is a receptacle of good, because few reflect upon such things, and yet this may be known from the following considerations. The external knowledges that enter into the memory are always introduced by means of some affection. Those not introduced by any affection do not remain there, but slip away. The reason is that in affection there is life, but not in external knowledges except through affection. From this it is plain that external knowledges always have conjoined with them the things of affection, or what is the same, of some love, consequently some good. For everything that is of love is called good, whether it be good or only thought to be so. External knowledges, therefore, together with these goods, form, as it were, a marriage. And hence it is that when this good is excited, the external knowledge with which it is conjoined is also at once excited. And conversely, when the external knowledge is recalled, the good conjoined with it also comes forth, as every one can prove for himself if he chooses. This then is the reason why with the unregenerate who have rejected the good of charity, the external knowledges which are truths of the Church have adjoined to them such things as are of the love of self and of the world. Thus evil things, which by reason of the delight that is in them they call good, and also by wrong interpretations make out to be good. These external knowledges have a pleasing appearance when the loves in question reign universally, and according to the degree in which they reign. But with the regenerate, the external knowledges which are truths of the Church have joined with them such things as are of love to the neighbor and love to God, thus really good things. These are stored up by the Lord in the truths of the Church with all who are being regenerated. And therefore when the Lord infuses into such persons a zeal for good, these truths appear in their order. And when he infuses a zeal for truth, this good is present and kindles it. From all this it is evident that external knowledges and truths are receptacles of good. Number 5490. And to give them provision for the way. This signifies that it would support the truths which they had, as is evident from the signification of giving provision, namely support, and from the signification of a way, namely truth. Here, however, for the way denotes so long as they were in that state, because to be on the way signifies a state of truth conjoined with good. By provision is also signified support from truth and good in David. He made it rain manna upon them for food, and gave them the corn of the heavens. Man did eat the bread of the mighty. He sent them provision to repletion. Number 5491. And he did so. This signifies the effect, as is evident without explanation. Number 5492. And they lifted their produce upon their asses. This signifies that truths were gathered into external knowledges, as is evident from the signification of produce, namely truth, and from the signification of an ass, namely external knowledge. Hence it follows that by their lifting their produce upon their asses is signified that truths were gathered into external knowledges. That this is the signification of these words seems strange to him who keeps his mind fixed upon the historic sense of the letter, especially if he believes that there is no other internal sense than that which proximately shines forth from the letter. For he says to himself, how can lifting produce upon their asses signify truths gathered into external knowledges? But let him know that the literal sense of the word passes into such a spiritual sense when it passes from man to the angels, or into heaven, and even into a still more remote sense when it passes into the inmost heaven, where each and all things of the word pass into affections, which are of love and charity, to which sense the internal sense serves as a plane. That the historical parts of the word pass into another sense when they are elevated into heaven may be seen by the man who makes rational deductions, and who knows anything about the natural and the spiritual. He can see that to lift produce upon their asses is a purely natural act, and that there is nothing spiritual in it whatever. And he can also see that the angels who are in heaven, or those who are in the spiritual world, cannot apprehend these words otherwise than spiritually, and that they are apprehended spiritually when in their place are understood their correspondences, namely, the truth of the church in place of produce, and the external knowledges in the natural in place of asses. That by asses in the word are signified things that serve, and thus external knowledges, for these are things that serve relatively to things spiritual and also to things rational, may be seen explained at number 2781. Hence also it is plain what angelic thought and speech are relatively to man's thought and speech. That angelic thought and speech are spiritual, but man's natural, and that the former falls into the latter when it descends, and that the latter is turned into the former when it ascends. Unless this were so, there would be no communication whatever of man with angels, or of the world with heaven. Number 5493. And they went thence. This signifies the consequent life, as is evident from the signification of to go, namely, to live. The case is the same with to go, which in the spiritual sense denotes to live, as with what was said just above at number 5492. Number 5494. And one opened his sack. This signifies observation, as is evident from the signification of a sack, namely a receptacle in the natural, which was endowed with good from truth. That to open it denotes to observe is plain from the context. For the words which follow, to give his ass provender in the inn, signify when they reflected upon the external knowledges in the exterior natural. Number 5495. To give his ass provender in the inn. This signifies when they reflected upon the external knowledges in the exterior natural, as is evident from the signification of to give his ass provender, namely to reflect upon external knowledges. For provender is the food with which asses are fed, consisting of straw and chaff, and hence it denotes all reflection upon external knowledges. For these are what reflections chiefly feed on. That an ass denotes external knowledge may be seen just above, number 5492. And from the signification of an inn, namely the exterior natural. That an inn here is the exterior natural cannot indeed be confirmed from parallel passages elsewhere in the word, but still it can be confirmed from the fact that external knowledges are, as it were, in their inn when in the exterior natural. That the natural is twofold, exterior and interior, may be seen above. When external knowledges are in the exterior natural, they communicate directly with the external senses of the body, and there repose and as it were rest upon these senses. Hence it is that this natural is to external knowledges an inn, or place for resting, or for passing the night. Number 5496. And he saw his silver. This signifies apperception that it was without any ability of their own, as is evident from the signification of to see, namely to understand and apperceive, and from the signification of the silver being restored, as denoting without any power of theirs. Number 5497. And behold, it was in the mouth of his bag. This signifies that they were bestowed and stored up in the threshold of the exterior natural, as is evident from the signification of the mouth of the bag, namely, the threshold of the exterior natural. And that they were stored up there is implied, and that they were bestowed follows from what is said before, that it was without any ability of their own. As the bag was the forepart of the sack, therefore nothing else is signified by it than the forepart of the receptacle, thus the exterior natural. For this also is in front. That a sack denotes a receptacle may be seen at Numbers. In order that it may be known what the exterior and the interior natural are, it shall be again briefly explained. A boy, being not yet of mature age, cannot think from anything higher than the exterior natural, for he composes his ideas from things of sense. But as he grows up, and from sensuous things draws conclusions as to causes, he thereby begins to think from the interior natural. For from sensuous things he then forms some truths, which rise above the senses, but still remain within the things of nature. But when he becomes a young man, if as he then matures he cultivates his rational, he thus forms reasons from the things in the interior natural, which reasons are truths still higher, and are as it were drawn out from the things in the interior natural. The ideas from these are called in the learned world intellectual and immaterial ideas, while the ideas from the external knowledges in both naturals, in so far as from the senses they partake of the world, are called material ideas. In this way man mounts in his understanding from the world towards heaven. But still he does not come into heaven with his understanding, unless he receives from the Lord good, which is continually present and flowing in. And if he receives good, truths also are bestowed on him. For in good all truths find their abode. And according as truths are bestowed on him, so also is understanding, by reason of which he is in heaven. Number 5498. And he said unto his brethren. This signifies general perception, as is evident from the signification of saying in the histories of the word, namely perception, see above, and from the signification of unto his brethren, namely what is general, for that which is said to all becomes general. Number 5499. My silver is restored. This signifies that there was no aid from them, as is evident from the signification of restoring silver, namely without any ability of theirs, or what is the same thing, that there was no aid from them. Number 5500. And lo, it is even in my bag. This signifies that it was in the exterior natural, as is evident from the signification of bag, namely the exterior natural. Number 5501. And their heart failed. This signifies fear, as is evident from the signification of the heart failing, namely fear. The failing of the heart denotes fear, because the heart palpitates in fear. Number 5502. And they trembled each to his brother. This signifies a general terror, as is evident from the signification of trembling, namely terror, and from the signification of each to his brother, namely what is general. The reason why fear is here expressed twice, by the heart failing and by their trembling, is that one expression has reference to the will and the other to the understanding. For it is usual in the word, especially the prophetic, to express one thing twice, merely changing the words. He who does not know the mystery herein might suppose that it is a meaningless repetition, yet this is not so, for one expression refers to good and the other to truth. And because good is of the will, and truth is of the understanding, one refers to the will, and the other to the understanding. The reason is that in the Word everything is holy, and the holiness is from the heavenly marriage, which is that of good and truth. Hence it is that heaven is in the Word, and consequently the Lord, who is the all in all things of heaven, insomuch that the Lord is the Word. The double name of the Lord, Jesus Christ, involves the same, the name Jesus expressing the divine good, and the name Christ the divine truth. Hence it is plain also that the Lord is in all things of the Word, insomuch that he is the Word itself. That a marriage of good and truth, or the heavenly marriage, is in every part of the Word, may be seen above at Numbers. From this it may also be plainly concluded that man, if he hopes for heaven, must be not only in the truth of faith, but also in the good of charity, and that otherwise there is no heaven in him. Number 5503. Saying, "What is this that God hath done to us?" This signifies on account of so much providence, as is evident from the signification of God's doing, namely, providence. For everything that God does can be expressed by no other word than providence. The reason is that in everything that God or the Lord does, there is the eternal and the infinite, and these are in the word providence. Their being amazed, therefore, signifies on account of so much providence. Number 5504, verses 29 to 34. And they came unto Jacob their father to the land of Canaan, and told him all that had befallen them, saying, The man, the lord of the land, spake hard things to us, and took us for spies of the land. And we said unto him, We are upright, we are no spies. We are 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the lord of the land, said unto us, Hereby shall I know that ye are upright. Let one of your brethren remain with me, and take for the famine of your houses, and go, and bring your youngest brother unto me. Then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are upright. I will give you your brother, and ye shall go about trading in the land. And they came signifies an advance in reformation. Unto Jacob their father signifies the good of natural truth. To the land of Canaan signifies which is of the church. And told him all that had befallen them signifies reflection from the good of that truth upon the things which were hitherto provided. Saying signifies perception. The man, the lord of the land, spake signifies the celestial of the spiritual reigning in the natural. Hard things to us signifies non-conjunction therewith on account of non-correspondence. And took us for spies of the land signifies that it observed that the truths of the church were for the sake of gain. And we said unto him, We are upright, we are no spies, signifies denial that they were in the truths of the church for the purpose of gain. We are 12 brethren signifies all truths in the aggregate. Sons of our father signifies of one origin. One is not signifies that the divine spiritual source does not appear. And the youngest is this day with our father signifies that from him is adjunction to spiritual good. And the man, the lord of the land, said unto us, signifies apperception concerning the celestial of the spiritual reigning in the natural. Hereby shall I know that ye are upright, signifies that it is willing if they are not in truths for the sake of gain. Let one of your brethren remain with me, signifies that faith and the will should be separated from them. And take for the famine of your houses, signifies that in the meantime they may provide for themselves in that desolation. and go signifies that so they may live. And bring your youngest brother unto me signifies that if there were an intermediate, there would be conjunction. Then shall I know that ye are no spies signifies that then truths would no longer be for the purpose of gain. But that ye are upright signifies that thus there would be correspondence. I will give you your brother signifies that thus truths would become goods. And ye shall go about trading in the land signifies that thus truths will be made fruitful from good, and will all turn to use and profit. Number 5505. And they came. This signifies an advance in reformation, as is evident from the signification of coming to Jacob their father, here, namely, an advance in reformation. For Jacob their father represents the good of truth in the natural, and to come to this is to be so far reformed. For in the internal sense, the subject treated of is the truths of the church, which are represented by the sons of Jacob, how they were implanted in the natural, and afterwards conjoined with the celestial of the spiritual, or what is the same, how truths in the external man were conjoined with truths from the divine in the internal. From all this it is evident that their coming here signifies an advance in reformation. Number 5506. Unto Jacob their father. This signifies the good of natural truth, as is evident from the representation of Jacob, namely, the good of natural truth, and also from the signification of father, namely, good. To come to this good is to be reformed to that extent. By this good afterwards, when the intermediate, which is Benjamin, was added, conjunction was effected with the internal, which is Joseph. Number 5507. Unto the land of Canaan. This signifies which is of the church, as is evident from the signification of the land of Canaan, namely, the church. This good of the truth, which is represented by Jacob, is the good of the external church, but that which is represented by Israel is the good of the relatively internal church. Number 5508. And told him all that had befallen them. This signifies reflection from the good of that truth upon the things hitherto provided, as is evident from the signification of to tell, namely, to think and reflect. For what is told any one is thought of from reflection, and from the signification of all that had befallen, namely, what is of providence, or what is provided, see below. The reason why the reflection was from the good of truth is that they told Jacob their father, by whom the good of truth is represented. The reason why the reflection was not from the truths represented by the sons of Jacob, as the sense of the letter implies, is that all the reflection and thence thought that the lower or exterior has comes from the higher or interior, although it appears to come from the lower or exterior. And as the good of truth that Jacob represents is interior, therefore reflection from the good of truth is signified. The things which befell them are things of providence or things provided, because everything that befalls or happens, which men call accidental and ascribe to chance or fortune, is of providence. The divine providence works thus invisibly and incomprehensibly, in order that man may in freedom ascribe an event either to providence or to chance. For if providence acted visibly and comprehensibly, there would be danger of man's believing, from what he sees and comprehends, that it is of providence, and afterwards going to the other extreme. Thus truth and falsity would be conjoined in the interior man, and truth would be profaned, which profanation is attended with eternal damnation. Therefore it is better for such a man to be kept in unbelief than to be in faith and then depart from it. This is what is meant in Isaiah. Say to this people, hearing hear ye, but understand not. And seeing see ye, and know not. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and besmear their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and their heart should understand, and they should turn again, and be healed. It is for this reason also that miracles are not wrought at this day. For these, like all visible and comprehensible things, would compel men to believe. And whatever compels takes away freedom. Yet all the reformation and regeneration of man is effected in his freedom. Whatever is not implanted in freedom does not remain. It is implanted in freedom when the man is in the affection of good and truth. Miracles so great were wrought among the posterity of Jacob that they might be compelled to observe the statutes in their outward form. For this was sufficient for those who, being only in the representatives of a church, were in external things separate from internal, and therefore could not be reformed as to interior things. For they entirely rejected interior things, and therefore they could not profane truths. Men like these could be compelled without danger of profaning what is holy. That man at this day ought to believe what he does not see is evident from the Lord's words to Thomas in John. Because thou hast seen me, Thomas, thou hast believed. Blessed are they who do not see, and yet believe. That the things which happen, in other words, which are ascribed to chance or fortune, are of the divine providence, the Church indeed acknowledges, but still does not believe. For who does not say, when apparently by chance he comes out of some great peril, that he has been preserved by God, and also gives God thanks? And likewise when he is exalted to honors, and also when he becomes wealthy, he calls it a blessing from God. Thus the man of the Church acknowledges that what happens is of providence, but still does not believe. But on this subject of the Lord's divine mercy, more will be said elsewhere. Number 5509. Saying. This signifies perception, as is evident from the signification of saying in the histories of the word, namely, perceiving. See above. Number 5510. The man, the Lord of the land, spake. This signifies the celestial of the spiritual reigning in the natural, as is evident from the representation of Joseph, who is here the man, the Lord of the land, namely, the celestial of the spiritual. Man, vir, is predicated of the spiritual, and Lord of the celestial. For man, in the internal sense, is truth, and Lord is good, and truth from the divine is what is called spiritual, and good from the divine is what is called celestial. And from the signification of land, here the land of Egypt, namely the natural mind. That the celestial of the spiritual, which is represented by Joseph, reigned in both naturals, is contained in the internal sense of the preceding chapter, and it was to the end that this might be represented that Joseph was appointed over the land of Egypt. There are two things in the natural, external knowledges and truths of the Church. Concerning external knowledges, it has been shown that the celestial of the spiritual, or truth from the divine, disposed them in order in the natural. And now the truths of the Church, represented by the 10 sons of Jacob, are treated of. External knowledges must be disposed in order in the natural before the truths of the Church, because these are to be apprehended from the former. For nothing can enter man's understanding without ideas derived from such external knowledges as he has acquired from infancy. Man does not at all know that every truth of the Church that is called a truth of faith is founded upon his external knowledges, and that he apprehends it, keeps it in the memory, and calls it out of the memory, by means of ideas composed of the external knowledges in him. In the other life, the nature of these ideas is frequently shown to the life, to those who desire it. For such things are presented plainly to view in the light of heaven. And then also it appears with what degrees of shade, or with what rays of light, they have held the truth of the doctrine of the Church. In some this truth appears among falsities, in some among jests and even scandals, in some among illusions of the senses, in some among apparent truths, and so on. If the man has been in good, that is, if he has lived a life of charity, then from that good, as from flame out of heaven, truths are illumined, and the illusions of the senses which they are in are beautifully irradiated. And when innocence is infused by the Lord, these fallacies appear like truths. Number 5511. Hard things to us. This signifies non-conjunction therewith on account of non-correspondence, as is evident from the signification of speaking hard things when predicated of the internal relatively to the external separate from it, namely non-conjunction on account of non-correspondence. For if there is no correspondence of the external with the internal, then all that which is internal and comes from the internal appears hard to the external, because there is no conjunction. As for example, if it is said by the internal, or by one who is in the internal, that man thinks nothing from himself, but either from heaven, that is, through heaven from the Lord, or from hell. If he thinks good, that it is through heaven from the Lord, if evil, that it is from hell. This appears altogether hard to him who desires to think from himself, and who believes that if this were as stated, he would be nothing at all. Yet it is most true, and all who are in heaven are in the perception that it is so. In like manner, if it is said by the internal, or by those who are in the internal, that the joy of the angels is from love to the Lord and from charity to the neighbor, that is, when they are in the use of performing things of love and charity, and that in these there is so great a joy and happiness as to be quite inexpressible. This will be hard to those whose joy is only from the love of self and the world, and not from the love of the neighbor except for the sake of self. Yet heaven and the joy of heaven first begin in man when his regard for self dies out in the uses which he performs. Take this also as an example. If it is said by the internal that the soul of man is nothing but the internal man, and that the internal man after death appears just like man in the world, with a similar face, a similar body, and similar sensitive and thinking faculties, to those who have cherished the opinion concerning the soul that it is only a power of thought, and thereby as it were ethereal, thus without form, and that it will be clothed again with the body, what is said by the internal about the nature of the soul will seem far removed from the truth, and it will be hard to those who believe that the body only is the man, when they hear that the soul is the man himself, and that the body which is buried is of no use in the other life. And yet that this is the truth, I know. For of the Lord's divine mercy I have been with those who are in the other life, not with a few, but with many, not once, but often, and have talked with them about it. So also in numberless other cases. Number 5512. And took us for spies of the land. This signifies that he observed that the truths of the Church were for the sake of gain, as is evident from the representation of the sons of Jacob, who are meant here by us, namely the truths of the Church in the natural, and from the signification of spies, or spies of the land, namely those who are in the truths of the Church merely for their own advantage. Number 5513. And we said unto him, We are upright, we are no spies. This signifies denial that they were in truths for the sake of gain, as is evident from the signification of saying unto him, namely, a reply, here a denial, and from the signification of we are upright, namely, that they were in the truths which in themselves are truths, and from the signification of spies, namely those who are in the truths of the Church for their own advantage, here meaning that it was not for this. Number 5514. We are 12 brethren. This signifies all truths in the aggregate, as is evident from the signification of 12, namely all things, and when as here predicated of the sons of Jacob, or of the 12 tribes named from them, and also of the 12 apostles, namely all things of faith in the aggregate. Number 5515. Sons of our Father. This signifies from one origin, as is evident from the signification of sons, namely truths, and from the signification of father, namely good. Hence, sons of a father signify truths from good, thus from one origin. Moreover, all truths are from one good. Number 5516. One is not. This signifies that the divine spiritual source does not appear, as is evident from what was said above, number 5444, where the same words occur. Number 5517. And the youngest is this day with our Father. This signifies that by him there is a junction to spiritual good, as is evident also from what was explained above, number 5443, where the same words occur. It is said by him because the intermediate which is represented by Benjamin proceeds from the celestial of the spiritual, which is Joseph. Number 5518. And the man, the Lord of the land, said unto us. This signifies perception concerning the celestial of the spiritual reigning in the natural, as is evident from the signification of saying in the histories of the word, namely perceiving, see above, and from the signification of the man, the Lord of the land, namely the celestial of the spiritual reigning in the natural. Number 5519. Hereby shall I know that ye are upright. This signifies that it is willing, if they are in truths not for the sake of gain, as is evident from the signification of knowing, here namely to be willing, for this follows from the context, and from the signification of that ye are upright, thus that they were not spies, namely that they were in truths not for the sake of their own advantage. Number 5520. Let one of your brethren remain with me. This signifies that faith in the will shall be separated, as is evident from the representation of Simeon, who is here one of your brethren, namely faith in the will, and from the signification of letting remain, namely being separated. This subject has been explained before. Number 5521. And take for the famine of your houses. This signifies that in the meantime they may provide for themselves in that desolation, as is evident from what was said above, where similar words occur. It signifies in that desolation, because desolation is signified by famine. Number 5522. And go. This signifies that so they may live, as is evident from the signification of to go, namely to live. Number 5523. And bring your youngest brother unto me. This signifies that if there were an intermediate, there would be conjunction, as is evident from the representation of Benjamin, who is here the youngest brother, namely an intermediate, and from the signification of bringing him unto me, namely that thereby there would be conjunction. For by the intermediate there is effected a conjunction of the internal represented by Joseph with the external things represented by the sons of Jacob. Number 5524. Then shall I know that ye are no spies. This signifies that then truths would no longer be for the sake of gain, as is evident from the signification of spies, namely, those who arm the truths of the Church for their own advantage, meaning here that they would be so no longer if there were conjunction through an intermediate. Number 5525. But that ye are upright. This signifies that thus there would be correspondence, as is evident from the signification of ye are upright, namely, that they were in truths. For uprightness is truth. And as they are then in truths not for the sake of their own advantage, when there is correspondence, therefore this also is signified by ye are upright. Number 5526. I will give you your brother. This signifies that thus truths would become goods, as is evident from the representation of Simeon, who here is the brother whom he would give them, namely faith in the will, and from the representation of the 10 sons of Jacob, who here are they to whom he would be given, namely the truths of the Church and the natural. I will give you your brother signifies that thus truths will become goods, because when there exists faith in the will, truths become goods. For as soon as the truth of faith which is of doctrine enters the will, it becomes the truth of life, and becomes truth in act, and is then called good, and also becomes spiritual good. From this good a new will is formed in man by the Lord. The will causes truth to be good, because regarded in itself the will is nothing but the love. For whatever a man loves he wills, and whatever he does not love he does not will. And also because all that which is of the love, or from the love, is perceived by the man as good, for it delights him. Hence it is that everything of the will, or from the will, is good. Number 5527. And ye shall go about trading in the land. This signifies that in this way truths will be made fruitful from good, and will all turn to use and profit, as is evident from the signification of to trade, namely to procure for oneself the knowledges of good and truth, thus the truths of the Church, and to communicate them. They who have such things are called traders. Wherefore to go about trading in the land is to seek diligently for such things wherever they are. From this it follows that to go about trading in the land signifies also to make truths fruitful from good. For when conjunction is effected through the intermediate, which is Benjamin, that is, the conjunction of the external man represented by the 10 sons of Jacob, with the internal, which is Joseph, which conjunction is here treated of, or what is the same, when the man has been regenerated, then truths are continually made fruitful from good. For he who is in good is capable of clearly seeing the truths which flow from general truths, and this in a continual series, and still more afterwards in the other life, where worldly and bodily things do not cast a shade. That this capacity resides in good has been proved to me by much experience. I have seen spirits who had not been very clear-sighted when they lived as men in the world, yet had lived a life of charity, taken up into heavenly communities, and then they were in similar intelligence and wisdom with the angels there, and even did not know but that this wisdom and intelligence were in them. For through the good in which they had been, they were capable of receiving all influx from the angelic communities in which they were. Such a capacity, and hence such fruitfulness, resides in good. But the truths which are made fruitful in them by good do not remain truths, but are committed by them to life, and then become uses. And therefore by going about trading in the land is signified also that they all will turn to use and profit. Number 5528, verses 35 to 38. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, behold, everyone's bundle of silver was in his sack. And they saw the bundles of their silver, they and their father, and they were afraid. And Jacob their father said unto them, Me have ye bereaved. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and ye will take Benjamin. All these things will be upon me. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, Slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee. Give him into my hand, and I will bring him unto thee again. And he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he only is left. And mischief will befall him in the way wherein ye shall go, and ye will make my grey hairs go down in sorrow to the grave. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, signifies use from the truths in the natural. And behold, every one's bundle of silver signifies settings in order of truths as a free gift, was in his sack, signifies in the receptacle of each. And they saw the bundles of their silver, signifies perception that it is so. They and their father signifies by the truths and the good of truth in the natural. And they were afraid, signifies what is holy. And Jacob their father said unto them, signifies perception in them from the good of truth. Me have ye bereaved, signifies that thus the church was no more. Joseph is not, signifies that there is no internal. And Simeon is not, signifies that neither is there faith in the will. And ye will take Benjamin, signifies if the intermediate also is taken away. All these things will be upon me, signifies that thus what is of the church will be destroyed. And Reuben spake unto his father, signifies the things of faith in the understanding, apperceived by the good of truth. Saying, Slay my 2 sons, signifies that neither kind of faith will live. If I bring him not to thee, signifies unless an intermediate be adjoined. Give him into my hand, signifies so far as was in its power. And I will bring him unto thee again, signifies that it shall be restored. And he said, My son shall not go down with you, signifies that it will not let itself down towards lower things. For his brother is dead, signifies because the internal is not present, and he only is left, signifies that this one is now in place of the internal. And mischief will befall him in the way wherein ye shall go, signifies that with truths alone in the natural, separated from the internal, it would perish. And ye will make my grey hairs go down, signifies that this will be the last of the church. In sorrow to the grave, signifies without hope of resuscitation. Number 5529. And it came to pass as they emptied their sacks. This signifies use from the truths in the natural, as is evident from the signification of emptying the provision they brought from Egypt, namely, doing use from truths. For by provision is signified truth, and from the signification of sacks, namely, receptacles in the natural, thus the natural. Of the receptacles in the natural, see below number 5531.